Today's daf is Daf Tzadik Aleph. It's Sunday, and we're having a discussion here about Tadir and the Mekudesh, which takes precedence of what. Tadir takes precedence of Mekudesh or not, and we have not resolved it yet. In fact, we haven't resolved it at all. So the Gemara then continues another slant, another aspect of Tadir Shein Tadir. We're up to the Gemara here, right in the middle of the page. Iboiluhu, about 7-8 lines into the white lines. Iboiluhu. So okay, you told me that Tadir Shein Tadir Kodim. But what happens? You started working with the Einu Tadir. Do we say continue or do we say stop and move to the Tadir? Tadir Shein Tadir. The Kodim v'shachet, and he went ahead and he decided to slaughter the Shein Tadir. He slaughtered the one that's not Tadir. So what happens in this case here? What is the case over here? You have a carbon tamid, you have this, and the carbon tamid is the tadir, and the musaf is not. But you went ahead and you did the musaf anyway. What do we do? Do we say keep in the shachta? Since you did already the shchita anyway, so just continue. And makriv, go ahead and be makriv it and continue. Or we say no, pause. But remember, the blood has to be stirred all the time. Give it to another kind. The matters bedami will stir the blood. Add the makriv the tadir. In the meantime, go ahead and be makriv the tadir. But how the makriv then you be makriv the ein tadir. Amar Rav Huna Mesurim. Rav Huna Mesurim said, "Toshma, come in here. Shlomim shall emesh." It says in our Mishnah yesterday shlomim and chatas va'ashim shall yoim, and today's chatas va'ashim shall emesh kodim. Then yesterday shlomim is first because it's there first, and it's a zilzul for the shlomim to wait around. From the one yesterday. What about if it's today? Today Shlomim versus Chatas, but today Shlomim similar to yesterday's. What do you mean similar to yesterday's? So we're assuming now it's talking about that you shechted yesterday's, and now you have today's, and now it's today. And what are you supposed to do? You should go. You stop whatever you're doing, and work with the Chatas, or continue with the Shlomim. The Kadam shachted the Shlomim. So the question is like this: if you did today, different like yesterday, which is what? So what happened when you shechted the shlomim before you did the karma chatas? And so therefore, and yet what do we say here? We said over here that if it's today, don't continue with the shlomim. We said don't continue with the shlomim, go to the chatas va'ashim. So we see that even if b'di'evid, you went ahead and you did the wrong thing, don't continue. Go back to the Chatas V'ashim. So it seems clearly. So the Gemara says, who told you that your inference is correct and who told you it was right? No. We're talking about Shlomim, the Emesh, the Chatas V'ashim, and what are we talking about? Heichem Eshkachel, we're talking about the Shachtin L'Tavayu. You shechted both of them. and you shechted both of them. And then we say, that since you shechted both of them, it's yesterday shlomim, go ahead and do yesterday shlomim. But if you didn't shecht both of them, you only shechted the shlomim, then we would say that that's our question. What should you do? You only shechted the shlomim. Should we already continue with the shlomim? So if you shechted both and now you're up to doing this rika, we say, well, it's yesterday, even though it's yesterday shlomim and today's chatas, right now they're both ready to do the same thing. The chatas takes precedence. But if you shechted both today, the question is which one should go first? That's our question. Because you should have done the chatzah first, but you didn't. You did the other one, and now you shechted both. What should you do? Tashma, coming here. We're going to go through the same things we brought down before, but from a different perspective. We said why do we make bracha first? Because it's more common. The birchas and the bracha of the day is not common. And Todesh, the Kiddush is only Friday night. Todesh kaidim. Now the Chayda Shabbos comes in. Shabbos came in whether you like it or not. So it's as if you started already with the Eina Tadir, and yet we say stop, go to the bracha of Regafin. So the same thing here. Even though you started the Eina Tadir, pause and go to the Tadir. Hacham here too. Even the Asian, since the Shabbos came in, is commanded chita. One answers no. That since Shabbos came in, it's the same thing as if you shechted both. Because I said before, Shabbos affects also Ber Prigofen, and therefore they both happen at the same time. But doesn't answer our question is where you did the Ein Tadir first, Here, the Bar Priagafen and the kiddush both come in at the same time. So therefore, you go ahead and do Bar Priagafen because it's Tada. We're talking about where you went ahead and you shechted the animal that's ain't a Tada first. What should you do? You should continue that. Tashma coming here. And again, it came the time of mincha, whether you like it or not, and yet we say that what do you call it? That daven mincha. That we say, stop what you're doing in the Muslim and daven mincha. So we see that if you did what do you call it? That even though it was sorry, the other way around, it's a time of Muslim already, and so on, and yet we say stop the Muslim and go to mincha. So even though you started already, the Einay Tadir moved to the Tadir. So we have to know. Since it came to mincha now, it's as if they're both the same time. It's no longer that Musaf was here first. Now at this juncture we're at, it's as if they both came at the same time. So we have no proof once we haven't resolved it. It says if he shechted the korban Pesach, you're supposed to shech the korban Pesach after Chatzos, after Mincha. You shecht it prior to Chatzos, it is possible. It is possible. It says a possible in the afternoon. But if you shechted before the korban tamid, it was already afternoon, but it was before the tamid, kosher. But still, as soon as you realize it, you stop. The yemamad is bedama. You should continue stirring the blood. So even though you did the wrong thing first, we don't say continue. Say stop. Go ahead, do the mincha, and then you go back to it. So the Gemara, the Chayra does not resolve your question that even though you did you started with the Eina Toda, you must stop and do the Toda first. So the Gemara, and here we're talking about you're going to Kodim Shachte L'Tamid B'Reisha. No, here we're talking about, you know why it's kosher, you know what's going on here? You shechted the right one first, the Tamid first. And then you shechted the Pesach. And you did not do the Zrika of the Korban Tamid yet. You didn't do the Zrika of the Korban Tamid. And now you're coming along. What should I do? I have to spray the Korban Pesach, I have to spray the Tamid. What should I do? And therefore we say, continue with the Korban Tamid because you check that as well. It says over here that you gotta wait until you sprinkle the blood. It doesn't say you should shech the Tamid v'yizek. Is that you already shechted the Tamid? So you already did the Tamid. And now the question is, which blood should you spray? But if you did not do the Tamid and you shechted the Korban Pesach, maybe you should continue, even though it's the Ein Tadir one. Maybe you should continue. You started already. We haven't resolved it. So a lot of questions here we haven't resolved. Then the Mishnah said, the Kohanim can do whatever they want. My time, but why? It says about the Lemashcha, which we title is the Kohanim can go ahead and participate in all the kabbanas there. Lemashcha, we translate Lemashcha Ligdula, for greatness. You should eat like the kings eat. Eat properly, cook it properly, whatever's tastier for you. Next Mishnah, Amar Shimon says, if you happen to notice Shem and oil, Shem is Chalik Ba'azara. You saw that they were distributing oil to all the Kohanim in the Azara. That means this comes from a mincha, which by a mincha you do the kmitza, you put it on the mizbeach, it gets burnt, and the rest is consumed by the Kohanim. So if you see oil, Shehum is Chalik, it's being distributed to Kohanim Azara, what is it? Ain't Tzarech Lishla. You don't have to ask because you know exactly what it is. It could be one or two things. Either Moiser Rikike Menachas Yisrael, either it's a leftover of the matzahs that you do by a mincha of a yidin. So you have a mincha which is baked, and you have Rikikim chalas. You have some where the oil is mixed in, and then you have some leftover oil, and then you have some where the oil is done on the outside. First you bake it, and then you put the oil. It absorbs much less, and then you fry it, but it absorbs much less because it's already baked. And this is the remnants of that oil. And so therefore it belongs to the Kohanim, no issues. And then he says it. And if you saw shemen shehunitna gabi ishim, if you saw oil that was placed on the top of the fire, you don't have to on top of the fire is bad, which means it's totally getting burnt. Again, you don't have to ask. You know exactly what it is. Mahu. You don't have to ask what it is. Elamoisa, definitely what it is the kike minchas kainim, is the leftovers of the matzah of kainim. The minchas kainim, the entire mincha gets burnt on the mizbech. And minchas kayim Mashiach, and so too the mincha of a kayim Mashiach. It's if you see the oil, it has so much oil in there because he had 3 loigen for in his son, and because it was baked first, the oil doesn't get absorbed. So the chavis of the kohen gadol has plenty of oil left over, and therefore you have to roast some mizbech. If you see the oil going, then you know exactly where it's coming from. She'ein misnadrin shemen, because there's no reason to think otherwise. There's no reason to think that maybe somebody donated a jug of oil separate, not part of a carbon. No, because we don't. You cannot. You could donate wine, you could donate kabbalah, but you cannot donate oil. Rab Tarfon, however, disagrees. He says misnadrin shemen. You could donate oil. Okay, says the Gemara. When somebody donates oil, according to Rab Tarfon, you could donate oil. So remember, there's 2 kinds of minchas. There's some minchas where the entire mincha goes on the mizbech, we just said, and there are other minchas where you do a kmitza and scoop it out and you put a mizbech, but the rest it does not go on the mizbech. It goes to the kohen. So Amar Shmuel, the divrei Rab Tarfon, hamisnadiv shemen. So Shmuel says, according to Rab Tarfon, if you donate oil, koimtzoi, only the kmitza goes on the mizbech, but the shiyar of necholin, the balance of that oil is eaten by the kohenim. My time and why? Because on Makro it says a pasuk, if a person will bring up kenefesh kisakriv korban mincha Hashem. The word carbon is superfluous. You already said kisakriv. So what do you mean carbon? To tell you there's another kind of carbon like a mincha. That's oil. Malamash is not Hashem oil. Mincha, but it's like a mincha. Ma mincha is like a carbon mincha. Koim, so generally speaking, the koim goes on his bech. The rest is eaten by koim. Avshem, and so to oil. Koim, so the koim goes to the mizbech. The shiyar of the chol, and the balance gets eaten by kohenim. Amar Rab Zayda, so I support Shmuel. We also learned. Amar Rab Shimon said, "Im re'isa shemen shemes chalak b'azara." If you see oil being distributed as zara, you don't have to ask Ma what it is. Definitely, it's meiser rekike menachas Yisrael. It's definitely left over of the rekike of a mincha Yisrael, which goes to the kohenim, or like shemen shel metzayda, or the like shemen of a metzayda. She'ein misnadrin, because oil generally oil is not something that you bring up, that you donate, and therefore it must be as if to say, but if you would have donated it, you would have to. So because it's generally you don't donate oil. So what's the proof of this? He says here, Miklal, the man the Oma misnadrim. But if let's say you would have held that taka, there was oil that was donated, mischalik. That could also be a source of the distribution. He says that you can assume it's one of these 2 things, no other options. Why? Because you don't donate oil, because we cannot donate oil. As if to say, but if you could donate oil, there'll be a 3rd option. And what would the 3rd option be? The same thing, that you put a little bit on the mizbech and the rest you distribute to the kohenim. So this is a proof to Shmuel. Look at the sefer. The sefer, it says, if you saw the oil sitting there on the fire burning, you don't have to ask what it is. It must be left over of the wafers of a minchas kohenim or minchas kohen Mashiach. One of those 2, could they get totally burnt in the mizbech, and you don't have to worry about the 3rd option, which is emis nadrin shemen, because you're not allowed to donate oil. This is to say, but if you did donate oil, then that might be the 3rd source of the oil that's burnt on the mizbech. So Abai says, see clearly from here, I don't agree with Shmuel. You see clearly from here that oil, if you donate oil, the entire lot goes on the mizbech. It doesn't get distributed amongst kohenim. So he argues with Rab Zayda and Shmuel. Miklal, you can infer the man misnadiv kulich all goes on fire. Says the Gemara, labaya kota baya kashiresha. The first part of the mission is difficult because it seems to say that the only reason why the only 2 sources that you distribute the kohenim are those 2, and not because people don't donate oil. As if they would donate oil, then that's a 3rd source for distributing amongst kohenim. Question on Abaya. And the Rab Zayda Kasha Sefer. Rab Zayda, the Sefer, because it says the entire thing goes on the fire. You don't have to worry about. You don't have to wonder whether it comes from somebody donating, because you're not allowed to donate. Had it come from somebody donating, then you would understand that also is on the fire. Or it's another option. Kasha Sefer. So there's a question on both different parts of the Mishnah. So thinking about a Bishla, Rab Zayda Reish, he said not a problem. The Reisha, which you distribute, is talking about B'Shirayim, the remnants of the Mincha, and Sefer, where it says it goes all burnt up Mizbeach, it's talking about Kaimitz. Talking about what to scoop out. El Abaya Kasha. Abaya is difficult. Okay, the Sefer is talking about it goes on the fire, and had you been donated, it will go on the fire. But how's he going to understand the ratio? It says that for distribution, since nobody's allowed to donate oil, they couldn't have been the source. But if they would, if they could donate oil, but they would be the source. That means that it does get distributed. So Gemara said, no. Tana Reisha Otu Sefer. Because at the end of the Mishnah it says that nobody donates, it says the same thing in the beginning, even though it's totally inconsequential. So we find many times at the end of the Mishnah repeat something, even though it's not so relevant, because it continues the flow from the beginning. What it changes the beginning of the Mishnah, it says something which is totally unnecessary to suit the end of the Mishnah. Says yes, in Israel they say, yes, it does happen. Okay, continue. Toshma, we learned. We'll continue on the arguments. We have Shmuel, who says that only a little bit of the oil goes on the bath, the rest gets distributed, and therefore, what do you call it? And according to Abaya, all of it gets burnt. So anyway, Toshma, we learned Yayin when it comes to donating wine. Rabbi Kiva says you could donate wine on its own. And the Chacham argue, and Rabbi Kiva says you could donate wine on its own. I mean, what do you mean? And what do you do with this wine? There's an argument between Rabbi Kiva and Chacham. What actually do with this wine? So Rabbi Kiva says, so we saw this. Yayin Kediv Rabbi Kiva, if you donate wine, Allah Rabbi Kiva says that you can, donate wine as a carbon in its own right, is lasafolim. What do you do with that wine? You just pour it down the chutes by the mizbeach. So then he says Kediv Rab Tarfon. But when it comes to the Rab Tarfon and oil, Shemen, and when it comes to oil, like Rab Tarfon says that the oil you could donate as a separate carbon, is Leishi. What happens to that oil? It goes to the fire. So clearly, and therefore, now what are we talking about? We're talking about only the kimitza, the little bit you take out and scoop out, or we're talking about the entire lot of oil. So we're comparing it to the wine. My lab, but the yain coolest from the entire wine contents go down the chute, Shemen coolish, and the entire oil contents go down into the fire. So you want to meet the area. Why are you making this connection? Hakadis or hakadis. So when it comes to the wine, it means entire wine. When it comes to the oil, it means only the bit, the kimitza part of it, not the entire oil. Papa says maybe this is an argument between Tanai. What's the story? It says Shemen, how much oil when you donate oil? How much oil should it be? La yivchai should not be less than a like. Should not be less than a like. And Rebbe says no. The minimum should be 3 legging. What are they arguing? Why did he say 1 leg to 3 legging? But Mike, what's their argument? Amru Rabbanan Kamei Papa. So the rabbi said before that Papa, I'll tell you the argument. There's a principle that we have. Mina umina. If you learn B from A, does B you learn from A in every respect, or do we say you learn from B from A from the principle, then you take B back to its own place and you compare the B to itself, and you learn the dinim accordingly, even though it's not suitable for A. All we need to glean from A is the principle. So doin mina umina, we learn from it the principle, and we learn everything else from there as well. Or doin mina v'uki ba'asra, or we learn from there v'uki ba'asra, and you translate it to here, transmit it to here. Rabban hold. Where do we learn the whole concept that you can donate, let's say, oil? We learned it from carbon mincha. We said before. It says carbon mincha. So it says we're comparing it to mincha. So Rabban hold. Ma mincha misnadvin. You can donate mincha after misnadvin. Umina from there. Ma mincha, just like mincha, is loig v'shemen. Just like mincha is how much oil do you use for carbon mincha? Only 1 loig. Is avkan loig shemen. So too here donating is only 1 loig. Uma mincha, just like a mincha, and just like a mincha, that the koimitz goes on the mizbeach and the leftovers are eaten. So af shemen, so to shemen, koimtzai, the koimitz goes on the mizbeach, but she'er necholim, like Shmuel said, Abzeda, that the oil is distributed amongst the koinim. The idach and mincha. The other opinion says no. We learn that what only the principle for mincha, ma mincha misnadmin, you could donate mincha af shemen misnadmin. But how much? In the details, no. Wuki baso. Now let's compare it to the sachim. Where else do you find that the libations and the oil are very similar? You could donate. So let's look at the libations. Ma nesachim, just like when it comes to the sachim. How much do you have to donate? Shloisha legin. You have to donate 3 legin when it comes to oil. Is af shemen shows legin. So to oil is also 3 legin. Uman esachin kulas von, just like the wine, all of it goes down the chutes. Af shemen kulishim. We're comparing it to the wine, so also the entire oil gets burned in the mizbech, and that explains the machlekes of Shmuel and Abaye. It's like these tanaim. Amalei Papa Abaye, Imim mincha ma'isla. Rebbe, if Rebbe actually learned from the very pasuk you mentioned before, carbon mincha, therefore you learn from mincha, then you're right. Then we learn exactly like mincha, and would be one leg and all that, and we would also say that the shiraim go to the kohenim. Rebbe actually learns it me'ezer gamla. He learns from another pasuk altogether, and from that pasuk over there, how you can donate oil, not from the pasuk of mincha, and therefore nothing to do with mincha, absolutely nothing to do with mincha, and maybe and that's because it says ezrach. It says in the pasuk Ezra an extra word by wine, and therefore he learns from wine, and that's why he needs 3 legin. So they said back, how can you say that Rebbe learns from Ezra? What time we learned carbon mincha melama. The word carbon by mincha teaches you shemisnadvin shem, you could donate oil. The kama and how much shloisha legin, and it says there, even though you're learning from mincha 3 legin, not because you're learning from wine. Uman shamad lei the amar shloisha legin. Who says you need 3 legin? Rebbe, the kamaisa, and he's learning from carbon. So and he's learning from carbon. So therefore, Abai is right. It's a machlekes tanaim. Omalei said, Papa has it back. Tanya. Well, you have me there. If it's a brisa, it's a brisa. Next day, Shmuel said, "I'm not the v'yayin." If somebody donates wine, maybe mazav v'gabishim. He says, if somebody donates wine as a separate entity, not as ancillary to a carbon, so he brings the wine and he pours it on the mizbeach, on the fire. My timer, when it comes to wine, not that you put it on the Kiva says you put it on the spalin. He said you put it on the mizbech. My timer, why is it you put it on the mizbech? Omakra says the pasuk, the yayin takriv lanesach. You should bring the wine to pour. Chatzahin ishe on the fire. Reach nechoyach l'Hashem. On the fire, it's a reach nechoyach to Hashem. It's a pleasing smell to Hashem. The Gemara has a question: how can you put the wine directly on the fire? Become a chabbe. You are extinguishing it, and the Torah clearly says that you're not allowed to extinguish the fire. It says lei sichba. Took a boy, the fire should burn the lei sichba. You shouldn't extinguish it. Says the Gemara, keep mikdash or keep it. So a slight extinguishing. We're talking about extinguishing the entire fire, but a little bit dimming it is not a problem. So when it's not so, you remove one piece of coal, agave mizbeach, from the mizbeach, the keeping extinguisher chayiv. Says the Gemara, that's talking about the lekalai. That was the only remaining coal because you extinguished the entire fire. Or you buy sema, or I could tell you, maybe you're right. Even a small extinguishing is a problem. But kibui the mitzvah shiny. Here I'm doing it because that's the mitzvah what to do with the wine, and therefore it's not a problem. Klapi should not klapi this shenit Torah, because the Torah says that litraim. The Torah says that you have to remove the ashes every single morning. Yochel, what happens? You come there and there's no ashes because the fire really hasn't burned through and through. So I would have thought yichbe the yitrim, so just extinguish the fire while it's burning and go ahead and take whatever you can. Amr says la yichbe. So clearly, even a partial extinguishing is a problem. So Gemara shiny house, there's different. Efshe the yosef, what do you have to extinguish it all? Wait a little bit, it'll burn out, and you'll have your coal. You'll have your ashes. Toshma coming here. Yayin kedivre Rabbi Kiva. Let's follow what we had on the top of the page. Wine, according to Rabbi Kiva, doesn't go on the fire; it goes down the chutes. And shem and oil kedivre tarfalish on the fire. So that's one question. You just said that the wine, the ones who say you can make a carbon out of wine, you have to pour it on the fire. No, it says clearly here you don't pour it on the fire; you pour it down the chutes. According to Rabbi Kiva. But furthermore, Tanya, we learned yayin nesech lasafolim. That where does the yayin nesech end up? Down the chutes. Maybe on the fire. Amrit, we say lo yichba. You're not allowed to extinguish. So clearly, you're not allowed to put it on the fire. It has to be down the safolim. Says the Gemara like kasha. Horab Yehuda, Horab Shimon. There's an argument Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, and it's called Dover She'em Miskav. This is the law not limited to Shabbos. It's a door called Derkula. You do something unintentional. A nazir comes his hair and some hair comes out, or use a brush and some hair comes out. It's unintentional, unless it's inevitable. So it's a Dova Shemes Kavan. Rabbi Yehuda says it's still forbidden because you did the malacha. Rabbi Shimon says it's permitted, that it's not considered a problem. So therefore, in this case over here, we'll say like this: you're pouring wine on the thing, it's unintentional. It's unintentional. So according to Rabbi Shimon, Dava Shemes Kavan is mutter, and that's why Shmuel says he poured it on the fire. But according to Rabbi Yehuda says the Dova Shemes is forbidden. That's what Rabbi Kiva says. You don't put it on the fire, but you put it down the shoots. So the Gemara. Like Kasha, Harab Yehuda, Harab Shimon. So remember, what are you concluding? That Shmuel holds like Rab Shimon. Now, Shim's relay. Why do you have a double Shemus Kamas Mutter? So you want to ask a question. Shmuel said, now just quickly, we have two principles, and Taisus is baffled how the Gemara links the two together. One is double Shemus Kamas. You pull a chair, you drag a chair, and another thing happens, you make holes in the ground. Totally unintentional. Rashi really asked, isn't it psik reisha when you're pouring wine on the fire that it's inevitable, and psik reisha it's not Dova Shemus Kavan, it's like intentional. So Rashi answers, it's not inevitable. You can always pour little drops at a time, it won't extinguish anything. Or you can pour it around the fire. It's not inevitable. Anyway, there's another concept called malacha she'ein tzich l'gufa. You're doing a malacha and you're consciously doing malacha and you want to do this malacha, but not for its ultimate purpose. You're digging a hole not because you want to use it for storage, you want the sand for some other reason. That's called the malacha she'etzich l'gufa, where again you have an argument of Yehuda and Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says that it's mahatayra, it's potter, but asr, and Reb Yehuda says that it's asr mahatayra. So the Gemara asks a question. You're telling me that Shmuel holds like Reb Shimon when it comes to davar she'ein miskaven. So we learned elsewhere. Shmuel said, "Mechabin gachela shematzka." There's a metal piece of coal out there in Shusarabim, and it's threatening everybody. You're allowed to extinguish it. That people should not get hurt. And some malacha she'ein tzich l'gufa. You have no benefit. You're not interested in the metal or anything else. And avaloi gachela shalaitz. You cannot do that with a wooden coal, because that you're extinguishing the fire. Now, whenever you extinguish a fire, it's a malacha she'ein tzich l'gufa, because you don't want the piece of wood, you don't want the fire anymore. The only time extinguishing fire is mahatayra is if you actually want that this wood should turn into coal. So you let it burn and burn and burn, and eventually extinguish the fire. So now you have your coal. You don't want it to turn to ashes. So then it's a malacha extinguishing the tzich l'gufa. You want the benefit of the fire. But if you're extinguishing the fire because you don't want the fire anymore, you don't want it to be hot, you don't want the light on, that's a malacha she'ein tzich l'gufa. So it says here, but a gechela shalaitz, you shouldn't extinguish it. Even though it's a malacha she'ein tzich l'gufa, he says there's no allowance for it because asr mahatayra. So clearly Shmuel follows Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to malacha she'ein l'gufa. And even though malacha she'ein l'gufa is limited to Shabbos, davar she'ein miskaven is called terikula. The Gemara seems to link the two arguments together. Now, Yisak says, well, like a Shimon, does not mean that even a coal of wood should be allowed to extinguish it because it shouldn't endanger people, because it's a malacha she'ein l'gufa. Says the Gemara, what are you comparing? But davar she'ein miskaven sovel Reb Shimon. When it comes to davar miskaven, you hold Reb Shimon, but malacha l'gufa sovel Reb Yehuda. So therefore, you can't link the two together. And that's how we explain Shmuel, or it's not a question on Shmuel, why he holds that you actually pour the wine libations on the mizbeach itself. And there's another place that says that, you only put it down the shoots of Akiva, because it depends if you hold that a davar she'ein miskaven is permitted or is forbidden. And Shmuel says davar miskaven is permitted, and that's why you can do that. So Gemara concludes, Amar Rav Huna would have said the sochim, if you have libations, you became tamei oisla marochel. If not, you make a separate fire, the sulfur, and you make a separate fire. And you burn it there. You don't keep it with everything else. You make a separate fire on the floor of the courtyard. Remember, it says by kodesh, but eish to sort. It has to be burnt inside the kodesh, and they get burnt there inside the Beis Hamikdash. And they don't get burnt in the Trumas Hadeshin with everything else that becomes tamei or puzzle that goes in Trumas Hadeshin. We make a separate fire. Tanya, we learned hadam, blood, shem, and oil. By the Zevachim libations, Rashi omits the word menachas. Shenitmu, that became tamei. Oisel marocha v'na'atzon surf. You make a separate marocha and you burn it over there. So everybody should realize that it's being burnt. Otherwise, if you throw it with everything else, it just gets mixed up. You wouldn't know the detection. Amal Rav Shmuel Rav Chana Baktor. Aisili be'asar. Bring me 10 people. The Emelach Kamaya. I want to say this din in front of them. Because in the Zevachim, I want to say this din. If I have 10 people, it'll become a public declaration. Everybody knows halacha. That's the Sachin Shanitmu Oisel Hen Marocha B'fnei Atzim Surf and Sachin Miyatami. You make a separate marocha and you burn them on the ground, separate from all other kabbalas that became disqualified. They get burned in the Beis Hadeshin, the ashes pile. Okay, have a good day, and we'll see you with Shem tomorrow.
Okay, just a question. Did we conclude that Tadir Roshana, Tadir Kodim is more important than the Kedusha?
No, we haven't concluded Tadir Mekudesh, even though some Rishonim rule that Tadir comes first against Mekudesh. The Gemara itself here hasn't concluded. There's a Yerushalmi that sort of concludes Tadir takes precedence.
Good. I'm glad to hear that because I thought I missed something.
No, you're right.
Okay.
No conclusion.
Thanks.
Okay.